Hello, everybody. Welcome back to week two. I hope you had a good weekend. And too bad about the Bills, but that's the way life goes. So they had a good season. That's the way it goes. So we're into week two, and I just want to go through a few things with you here. So announcements. It looks like everybody's signed up for the Zybook, and that's good. One thing I want to caution you about is that remember, this is just a web page, and in web pages, you're going to download the web page from the Zybook. You're going to do your work in the Zybook, and then some event is going to trigger the updates that you made. For instance, doing the PAs and the CAs back to Zybook, and then they're going to record those as your grades. If you X out of the page, just click the X button and close the window, I don't know that it really gets a chance to report that back. So if that's the case, you may get a wacky grade on there. That's why I always suggest that that you need to check your grades regularly just to make sure that Zybook is recording them properly. Okay, so you shouldn't get less than 100s on the PAs, the CAs, or the Xylabs. Get 100s on them. Okay. Office hours. Remember, I have my regular office hours. If you're on campus, fine, stop by. If you're not, we can chat on the phone, we can chat by Zoom, we can do, whatever you want to do on this one. We've got a TA for this class, and I'll be giving you more contact information for her. I've worked with her in the past. She's just wonderful. She's a dynamo. She's just great. So you're going to love working with Pranavi, and so she's another good source of help if you need it. I don't think you will, but if you do, she's available. Remember, we've got this group project out there. Now, the group project is going to require you to use BigQuery and Data Looker Studio and all this kind of stuff that, we're not going to have a lot of time to go over in class. So what's going to have to happen is that you're going to have to learn how to do this stuff. Well, that's the business that you're in. So getting used to learning new things on your own is just, a good thing, good skill to have. So when you think about what are you going to have to learn, one, it's going to take time to learn this new stuff. And two, once we get toward the end of the semester, you're going to get busy. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that the first couple of weeks of the semester are easy peasy. So use this time to pull ahead and get used to things and get used to BigQuery and Data Studio. It will help you. So it's kind of things that you can use to learn about BigQuery and Data Looker. LinkedIn Learning. Let me bring up my web page here. So LinkedIn Learning, you're as a student at RIT, you get free access to this. So, you should be going through these things and learning some of the ideas and some of the technologies that they talk about. There's really good stuff out there. It's a useful way to learn how to do new things. YouTube. YouTube has lots of good little videos in them. You can see how short these are. This is a subscription that I like. I think this guy does a really good job. Loves data, and I subscribe to him. And you can see where he's got lots of really interesting, useful analytics tutorials that he goes through, and he does a really nice job. And so if you're looking, you can find your own. But if you're looking for one, this is one that I kind of like. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so lots of online resources from Google. They've got tons of training exercise. Let me go back to that one too. I forgot those. So, creating actual customer segmentation models using Google. I mean, this is really good stuff. This is straight ahead analytics stuff. There's a real e-commerce tilt to a lot of the Google resources, but you know what? A lot of you are going to end up working in e-commerce. So there's nothing wrong with learning how to do some work in e-commerce. So we're going to do this later on when we use Google Analytics, but here's a few things that you can look at too. Getting started with Google or LookML. that's their tool sets for using Data Looker Studio. I think you'll find it really interesting. But there's all of these technologies out there that you can just access for free. Now you have to go find them, but you know, this is a skill, learning new things that you should have. And so, getting used to this is just a good thing to do. And we're back to the LinkedIn learning. Um, this one's really good. Look, July 2022. You can't get much newer than that. Back to PowerPoint. Okay, so there's that. So get started now. You got some free time. It'll take you some time to get used to it. Dig in, give it a try. So in our last week, I didn't really talk much about the material that we covered in the Zybook, but the main guts of that first week were kind of these. Databases are everywhere. Everything's a database. Databases are everywhere. In my undergrad class, I spent a lot of time talking about this because I wanted to make sure that students knew how powerful the technologies that we're going to be talking about are. And one of the big things that I talked about was this whole notion of the difference between relational databases and non-relational databases. Relational databases have two real flavors to them. One is the online transaction processing, which is kind of your standard business database where you're recording transactions with customers. Customers buy things, customers, and then they get shipped and they get combined into orders, or customers at a bank have deposit money to their account and then withdraw money from their account. So the workload of a transaction processing system is kind of a bang, 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 all day long, every day, as users interact with the system. But online analytics processing is very, very, very different. In analytics, what we'll generally do is we'll take that big transaction processing system that managers have questions about what's going on in it, and then we'll do an extract once a week. We'll run a big query against our transaction processing system, and then we'll store that as kind of a data lake, data warehouse, some kind of an alternative structure. And then there'll be maybe half a dozen people that run just a few of the same queries every week against this data lake, data warehouse, and generate reports for managers to make decisions based on. That's an analytics workload. So the neat thing about analytics workloads is that they are not transaction oriented. They are big queries that happen only seldomly. Now, because of that, you're going to have a different data structure for things. And when we run that big query to populate our warehouse, it's going to come up with a different structure to it. So analytics processing is very, very different. There's very few writes that happen to an analytics database. Almost all the workload are reads, so that the people are reading the results from this transaction process, this analytics data warehouse. And that's what the workload is. So very, very different from transaction processing, which is bam, 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 bam. The other kind of databases we have out there are non-relational databases. NoSQL is a good example. And then finally, another kind are graph databases. And let's look at those for a second too. So, if we look at some of the different kinds of databases that are out there, many of these are going to be running on a cloud-based architecture. And many people are going to be using Amazon for this. So if we look at the kinds of solutions that Amazon has for databases, one, you'll notice two things. Analytics and data lakes are different than straight ahead databases. And if we look at the kinds of databases that Amazon has out there for users to use, you'll see that they are very different. There's a lot of different kinds out there. So our database types, where we have relational databases, then we have key value databases, in-memory, document, wide column, all of these non-relational ones, those kind of fall into that not relational. So we've got relational databases that are the transaction processing things and all the others are more oriented toward analytics, not completely, but more. And they work in a different fashion. So if you look at some of the examples out here, these are what makes Amazon run. Amazon Relational Databases, RDS. That's a huge database used by tons of companies across the world to do their standard transactions workloads. Now, other ones like key value databases, something like DynamoDB, that might be something that's a very different kind of a workload. If you think of kind of like the small mini, mini URLs, where you have a long URL and you want to shrink it to a small URL, that's a great example of a DynamoDB kind of thing, because what you've got is two things. You've got a key, which is the small URL, and then you've got a value, which is the long URL. And the neat thing about this is that it's very, very fast, but it's only if you're going from the key to the value. If you want to go from the value to the key, that's a totally different workload. So anyhow, lots of different databases out there, and those are useful things to know something about, and probably something that you should look at. And looking at the same page. Sorry about that. Looking at some of the use cases, looking at the ways that companies use cloud-based database management systems. Totally useful thing to do. So, dig around, get outside of just the Zybook and figure out what's going on in there. Graph databases, I bring those up because it's kind of a cool thing and useful thing to keep track of. And then chapter 2. So what chapter 2 is all about is to introduce the topics we're going to spend the rest of the semester talking about. And the big thing is this idea of objects and attributes. So what's a relational database? Well, it's a database that has a line for each object, and each object is described according to different attributes. So, when you think about a way to describe a guy like me, it would be, the line in the database would be Charles Porter, and then the attributes would be things like color of hair, wears glasses, doesn't wear glasses, what color eyes. And I'm just kind of looking at my own picture here to come up with those. And so the class of attributes would be things like color of eyes. For me, it would be brown, and wears glasses, yes. Hair color, doesn't have any. And so those would be the attributes, the ways to describe me that would be stored in a relational database. So as you work through this week's material, take your time, think about what you're doing. Remember that this is, we're introducing a ton of information in this week's work, and this is really important stuff. It's the blood and guts of relational databases. So get in touch with me if you have any questions. I hope you have a good week, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.